Hey, internet friends, we are back for another edition of our album of the month here on the Nine Circles audio thing. I am your host, Dan Kaplan, and with me are five of my esteemed colleagues from Nine Circles, the metal blog. I am going to go in order, which doesn't mean anything to you because this is purely a visual thing we're talking here, and this is an audio medium. First up, from out in California, Mr. Vincent Martinek. How you doing, Vince?
I am doing okay. I'm melting a little in this heat, but such is my curse.
Yes. Yes.
I chose this life, so I can't really complain.
I've already told you what the weather's like here, so I won't.
And I will not repeat the expletives that I hurled in your direction.
Joining us for the very first time on the Nine Circles audio thing, we're super stoked about that. Mr. Mark McKeel, how you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you guys.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Pleasure to meet you over the internet, I guess, to put a face to the name.
Absolutely.
All righty. With us tentatively from up north, Mr. Corey Butterworth.
Hello.
I
am
still there.
Hungover, so.
Oh man, what a time to have internet difficulties when you're already hungover, right?
Yeah, hence the almost giving up, which I still might. We'll see.
All right. Well,
Stay
we're
tuned.
gonna hang on to you for as long as we can. As long as we can here. Next up from out on Long Island, Mr. Chris Voss. Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you.
Good. Glad to hear it. And last but not least, also from out in California, I'm going to do the intro, but I have a question for you too after that. Last but not least, out from California, Miss Harakat.
Hi.
Hera Vidal, Catalina Jaramillo, however you would like
Lena.
to.
Corey.
Which one were we going to do for this?
I'm also melting. Thank you very much.
So my question, you guys are both out in LA. Like, have you guys ever gone to a show, like met up at a show or anything like that?
Yes, we have actually.
Yes, we have.
Last year we were both at Alcest, the Body and Creepers.
Yep. He also met my
Cool.
twin.
I did. I met her twin sister. She has not met my twin brother, but my twin brother also does not live in California. So
Wait, there's another Vince?
yes, there is actually.
Oh my God.
It's
His
okay.
name
My
is-
sister moved to Hawaii.
His name is Ian. He lives in Chicago, and he's a stupid idiot. And I know he'll hear this because he listens to these things. Ian, you bastard.
Alrighty. Well,
It's okay. I feel the same way. My sister moved to Hawaii with her husband.
Vince,
So
would
fuck her.
you prefer we address him as Vince Jr.?
Yes, actually, because I'm the older of the two of us, so.
Okay, Vince Jr. it is. There we go. Alrighty. Well, hey, we've done our intros. Sadly, we are without Josh Stewart today. We have run into some technical difficulties. Thank you, Google. Josh was unable to join the hangout. Corey was only just able to before we started recording. So yeah, we clearly had a great chat medium going here. But anyway, we are here, as I mentioned.
Hey, we may need some ad money, so don't do too much knocking Google on the air.
Yeah, right.
Still looking for sponsorships.
We are here, as I mentioned in the very beginning, for our Album of the Month podcast. We are into June, but you know how we do it. We go over the previous month's Album of the Month. And Corey, since you blew your load about this thing in the last podcast, why don't you tell the folks at home, what album are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to talk about Amorphis' Queen of Time.
We sure are.
Yeah.
Amorphis, Queen of Time, the 7th studio album they have done with current vocalist Tommy Judson. I believe it's number 13 or 14 overall.
13.
13, lucky number 13. Came out May 18th, so not quite a month ago. We're looking at about 3 weeks ago. This was one that the Amorphis fans among us, I think we're looking at with a great degree of anticipation, and the non-Amorphis fans among us were not really looking at all before last podcast. But here we are. We're going to talk about it. I don't know who would like to start. Anyone in the hangout want to do a hand raise?
I think we should give the honor to Corey.
God damn it.
All right.
Since we don't know what time he has here, let's go.
We don't know how much time is left
on this earth.
Corey, what'd you think about Queen of Time?
I loved it. I like talking about Amorphis in general because, you know, peaks and valleys, their peaks are really, really high and their valleys are also quite high. But I remember, Dan, we've talked about these guys so many times, and I remember talking about Under the Red Cloud when that came out, and how we had almost become, I don't want to say stale to what they were doing, Jutsun era Amorphis, but we were kind of getting to that point, and then Under Red Cloud came out, it was awesome, and I think Queen of Time just pushes things even further. This might be my favorite album out of, I guess, that series. I mean, it's hard to, you know, compare to like Skyforger, because those have just always resonate with me year after year after year. But I was very impressed with this. I remember when the B came out, we were having a little bit of a back and forth, and it's kind of some hesitancy. You know, wouldn't be the worst thing if they did a few new things, like maybe cutting out the harsh vocals, like whatever. But when everything came together, this thing is mint, start to finish, and it offers a lot. And I don't know. I mean, they know what they're doing. They're experts, and I you know, there were a couple albums that I wasn't super crazy about some years back, like Circle, but these last two have just blown me away, and this one, I think it might be the top of the list.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about, but it really was kind of after Skyforger, which I think was such a peak for them.
Yeah.
Beginning of Times was like fine.
It was okay.
Circle, I wasn't really that into at all, but yeah, you know, Under the Red Cloud brought things back in a big way, and this kind of continues that. It's funny because they still are doing that late era Amorphous sound, but something about it, the last two albums, it just sounds so rejuvenated, you know, even though it is like that sort of not quite mellow death, not quite prog death, somewhere in the middle, like folky elements here and there type thing. They sound refreshed. There's like new life breathed into these songs.
Some minor tweaks to the formula that they know so well, and it's made a huge difference in the last couple albums. Yeah.
I do wonder how much of that is due to this is the, you know, not coincidentally, the second album in a row they've done with Jens Bogren.
Probably because it is Jens Bogren.
Alrighty. Hera, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more about that in just a sec. But yeah, you know, I think he's kind of he's, you know, played a large part in this. It sounds fantastic, and I think he kind of like presses the right buttons and tweaks the right knobs, and, you know, gets the right amount of everything Amorphis needs. Yeah. So Hera, let's go over to you. What do you think of Queen of Time?
I love it. Like, it's, how do I put this in words without like wanting to sing the entirety? Because I love that album so much.
Oh man. The phrase I regularly use with Amorphis is I would get down on one knee and declare my undying love for Amorphis. Basically. Are you at that level too?
Yeah, I've declared my love for Amorphis since like I discovered them in like 2011, and then I went back and then went forward, and I was like, yeah, I'm sticking with my guns on this band.
Yeah. Well, even when they had that weak period, you know, it wasn't like it's like I am sort of with Opeth, you know, like, yeah, like their last three albums I haven't been nuts about. I know we have talked about this as a group. I know some people really like them, some people don't. I'm not nuts about the new albums, but I'm not gonna like stop loving and respecting Opeth, because I think, you know, they're still doing what moves them. They're still doing it naturally. Same thing with Amorphis. Even though Circle wasn't great, it still felt like they were doing what they loved and what felt true to them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So what were your thoughts on, I know Corey and I mentioned, what were your thoughts on the B when it first came out? Do you like the song, or do you know, what do you think of it as a lead single, and, you know, in the context of the album?
I probably played that song about 100 times when it first came out. So,
oh my gosh. Did the song start to like sonically disintegrate before your ears?
No.
Before your ears.
No. I mean, this is how you know that I actually like a song. I memorize it to the point where I can probably whistle it back to you.
Okay.
So.
And you're at that point with the B.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hear it.
No, not here.
You're gonna deny the podcast listeners that joy?
Yes,
you can't just introduce this concept.
Oh, well, I would do it for you, but I can't whistle. So, sorry, podcast listeners.
Yeah, I can probably whistle it back.
There we go. There we go. All right. All right.
I can probably whistle it back, but I don't want to right now. So.
Classic Lena.
Oh my gosh. Now I know there are two among us who were either sort of lukewarm on Amorphis, not totally familiar with Amorphis before this. So I want to save them for last because, just sort of that's going to be, I think, a longer, more in-depth conversation about like the exposure to this band. Chris, I know you have some experience. You've had some exposure to Amorphis before this.
I have. So yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm kind of in the midway point. So my experience with Amorphis was probably, I think the first album I heard in its entirety was Tuanella.
Okay.
So way back then. And then from there, it was probably from Decibel. Decibel had said something in that, given something good marks. So I checked that out, went back in time to 10,000 Lakes and Carillion Isthmus, got a sense, and it was good. It was something that I enjoyed. And then I hit Am Universum, and I just did not like the kind of adult-oriented rock direction that they went in, so I kind of dropped it. So I wound up kind of missing.
Hera is like cringing in the background.
I'm laughing my ass off because, yeah.
It's I think a lot of it depends on when you discover them, and kind of like any music, it's where you are in your life. And at that point, that wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I had kind of tuned out, even though they had changed singers. I think I vaguely looked at Silent Waters and Eclipse and Skyforger, but nothing really kind of stood out to anything that I wanted to listen to until Under the Red Cloud came out. And then when Under the Red Cloud came out, I was just like, oh, this is now what I want. You're at that age where you've kind of gone through whatever experimentation in music you are, and you come back and you see, oh, we've got a new vocalist, we're getting back to the heavier stuff, we're mixing in folk. So I kind of dove back in and really started to appreciate it. When it came time for Queen of Time, I was fairly excited. It wasn't probably the biggest thing on my radar, so I don't know that I would have given it the examination I did if Corey hadn't have gone head over heels and said, we're going to do this for the May release. But I really like it. I don't know that I like it as much as Under the Red Cloud. I think they're kind of on an equal footing. Queen of Time goes a little bit more with some of the orchestral pieces and some of the choir pieces. They retain a lot of the heaviness that I like that came back with Under the Red Cloud. The thing that really struck me about it more than anything else was it's very mid-paced. It's technically very beautiful. The vocals are outstanding. The classical elements are all there. Choir, folk. I mean, this is essentially, in a weird way, it has all the elements of power metal without being anything remotely like power metal. And it kind of struck me that it's so amazing how you can take all of these elements and two bands can do them in such very different ways and have them come out with this crazy kind of sincerity and honesty, but still sound completely different. The B was fantastic when it came out. I love that kind of guitar delay, kind of tapping intro. I love when it gets heavy. The first three songs just in general, I think are the strongest things on there. And my God, if we have to have any more sax in 2018 in metal, I'm probably going to blow my brains out. But
I was going to talk about that.
It works. I mean, it works here. I think it's a really solid start to finish album.
Yeah, I don't think you'd get any argument from that out of us. I'm with you. I mean, I think like they are. I don't want to even call them middle of the road. In terms like what you were saying about like them sort of being like what at a point where like they can give you what you want to hear. I don't think that's necessarily like middle of the road, but it's just I feel like they have found their element and they're fully in it. And they just know, like they'll have some, slight variations on it here. I mean, I can't remember ever having heard a sax solo in an Amorphis thing before, but Hera has a note.
I have.
Go for it.
So I'm like, okay, because this is how I know that I was like, okay, they're gonna go in another direction. And 2018 is a year of the prominent metal sax. But
the year of the prominent metal sax.
Yep, the year of the prominent metal sax.
China, you need to adjust your calendar. Throw out Ox and throw in prominent metal sax.
Yep. So in 2017, they actually released a live album called An Evening with Friends at Huvila. And they featured a very prominent sax in there. And it was all throughout the album. And once we get to Among Stars, we'll talk about Annika being there. So there's more coming from me because I did my homework.
Yeah. To be fair, the sax completely works.
Exactly my point. It's great.
I did dig it.
I'm gonna diverge for just a second here because we're talking about prominent metal sax. The sax solo on that new Ghost album, I gotta say I'm here for it. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'll take it.
What the hell is the name of the song? It's track 5. I cannot remember it for the life of me. But
I have not heard it yet. So.
Oh gosh.
It's fine.
I don't
Hera,
think I've
what
ever
are you doing?
listened to a Ghost song before.
It is Miasma.
Miasma, that's it. Yes, I was gonna say Memoria, but that's not it. Miasma. Yeah, I'm here for it. I think Ghost is another one of those bands where like Amorphis, like it's just enough outside of the expected wheelhouse, but like still totally works.
Well, something you said made sense. I don't think they've changed anything. They have really stuck to what they do, and they've refined it and made it their own. And you come to that openly or you don't. So that's why I for changed. They've done what they've been doing. I've just kind of become lately more receptive to it, which is why I think the album hit. But I'd be interested to know from the rest of the group too. I mean, how do you classify latter day Amorphis? What genre, if you got to fit them into a niche, where do you put them?
They are Amorphis.
Yeah,
that's an excellent.
Okay,
no, and I don't even mean that. I don't even mean that jokingly. I mean, they are their own sound. Like nobody. What's his name? Michael Captain at Last Rites wrote about this in his review. Nobody really sounds like Amorphis right now.
No, it's folk, it's power, it's melodeath, it's hard rock, it's got some 70s prog to it. I mean, they are definitely an entity that are kind of unclassifiable, except that they are Amorphis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that brings up this is another excellent instance of like, do things need to be classified in order for it to work? You know, I don't feel like you need to like zero in on like this is XX, like X and X like sub genre.
Right.
Like it doesn't really need a classification beyond its Amorphis.
I definitely am getting fatigue of those like random genre, like we had black gaze and now there's sludgecore and like this and that, and I'm just like it's whatever, just fucking listen to it,
It works as a signifier, like, but but like once it gets past a certain point, it's like you're just trying to be pretentious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's also, I think to an extent it's also like kind of a crutch for certain areas of the music press, maybe.
I think that's more what I was getting on with it. For a band to say we are this is like, it's a signifier to people who would be interested in listening to their music, like what you can kind of expect. But I don't know, I've seen people people try to shoehorn stuff into these very, very narrow categories, and it just doesn't work.
Cool. You have found a category for this band. They are literally the only band in it. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. What purpose does that serve? That doesn't work as a signifier to anybody else.
Exactly.
Like what you can expect from it. Just talk about what you liked about it instead of trying to talk about what it sounds like.
Exactly.
Again, labeling a genre, anything, it's such a weird subjective experience because your own shit goes into it. Your own perception of what a genre is and what it is goes into it. So it's like, why would you label it for the rest of them when everyone else was a different experience?
the subjectivity of it is exactly what the problem with it is. Like, you could say Amorphis is, this or that or whatever, but their sound encompasses such a wide scope that what you choose to focus in on and label them as says more about you than it does about them.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Vince,
to bring it back to what the chat's actually about.
Well, I was going to say, since you've chimed in here, let's move on to you. Now, you were not really familiar with Amorphis before we had chosen this album last month, were you?
That's correct. If you listen to the chat we did about Panopticon at the very end, when Corey dropped the hint that we were doing the Queen of Time. It's a podcast, but there's pretty heavy use of air quotes there. Before this, I had never listened to a single Amorphis song. I was kind of only familiar with them loosely by name. I knew that people that I knew liked them, but I had no idea what they sounded like. So my goal was, before we did this chat, I was going to listen to Amorphis' entire discography and then get the context for the Queen of Time that was needed, and of course that didn't work out.
I was gonna say, how'd that go for you?
real life shit and other albums that I was obligated to give time to for review purposes kind of put a damper on that. But what I did listen to was Corellian Isthmus. Corellian Isthmus.
Okay. Podcast people can't tell the difference.
Thousand Lakes and Elegy.
Okay, and this would be the fourth.
Obviously, listen to the Queen of Time. Yeah, so this is the fourth Amorphis album I've had a chance to sample, and the one I listened to before the Queen of Time was Elegy. So there's a huge chunk that is missing, I think.
Yeah. There is.
From my understanding of the breadth of Amorphis' discography, but I still ended up getting something out of it. It was those first three albums kind of chart the trajectory for the way that the rest of it sort of goes, which is going from like really raw, nasty Finnish death metal to like weird sort of prog death metal, or death metal with more progressive elements, to like full on prog metal, like weird stuff.
Yeah.
And losing all of the death metal except for like the harsh vocals, essentially.
Right. Yeah. The gap from Corellian to Thousand Lakes is, there is one, but it's not as anywhere near as pronounced as the gap from Thousand Lakes to Elegy.
Elegy was a huge difference. It knocked me off of my feet a little bit, going straight from that album from Thousand Lakes into that, and I wasn't prepared for it. And honestly, I think it kind of made me really not like Elegy all that much. So I was a little bit worried about what would happen with the Queen of Time, and I liked it a lot more than I thought that I was going to, surprisingly enough.
Okay. What specifically about this current incarnation of Amorphis does it for you? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's catchy. There are lots of things that I could say about the album in detriment to it. Like, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like it could have benefited a lot from some editing. Like, there were parts of the songs that I was listening to where I'm like, okay, does this part really need to repeat for a fourth time? Like, somebody could have there's little bits of things that could be chopped out here and there, but the fact that I got home from the gym and I was still humming parts of those songs to myself is like, that's really all you want from it, right? Yeah. It's just fun.
That's a good takeaway from the album. If you can come home and have it in your head, like, it's doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. And
any particular songs, on the album that you were taken with that really caught you?
honestly, one of the things that I really enjoyed the most about it was the sax solo.
All right.
And I never thought that I would say that.
Come on, sax solo.
The never-ending Twitter dashboard discussion that absolutely will not die is this question, this constant like talk about saxophone and metal, and I'm just like, it's good.
Yeah.
And I feel, I don't want to sound like derogatory about it. It's just I don't know why this keeps coming up all the time. And it's like
because metal internet needs something to be pissed about,
Correct.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody that I know is pissed about it. Everybody that I have seen talk about it is very vocally in support of saxophone in metal.
Yep.
And for the most part, I am too. If it's done tastefully,
right?
It's surprising that so far this year it's been pretty tasteful. I haven't heard it kind of used in a way where I'm like, oh God, not again yet.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think I've actually ever listened to a Ghost song before, but I know that that's what spawned this most current incarnation of the saxophone and metal discussion is Ghost's new album, and specifically how tasteful and rockin' the sax solo was.
Yeah,
but there was a saxophone part like very, very subtly done. I'm having the same problem that Dan has. It's track 3 from the album, and I cannot remember what it's called.
Daughter
of Hate.
Yeah. Definitely one of the best songs on the album.
One of my favorite songs on the album, and it's mostly because I was not expecting how tastefully that saxophone was used in there. Yeah. Saxophone, you think it's just like this big, brash sort of thing, this all-encompassing sound that just like kicks the door in and like takes over everyone's ears. But it was handled really nicely. And then there was also the one with Anneke von Ginsberg that I think was probably my favorite. And I can see Kat doing a little dance there, so I know that this is...
How is that not the closing track on the album, though?
I was going to say, let's talk about Amongst Stars.
That was my question, too. That was my actual first question when I heard that, is I'm like, how did they not end it there? Because the song that came after it was like...
such power.
Yeah. It was so lackluster by comparison. Not even on its own, but just by comparison to what came before it. I'm like, how did you decide that this was what's going to cap it off, and not just like let that shit kick into high gear and be done with it?
Right.
Exactly.
I don't think Pyres on the Coast is a bad song, and I think if it was placed somewhere in the middle of the album or even immediately before Amongst Stars, it would have been fine. But
it did not deserve the closing spot. Like,
no, it did not.
But that's kind of also what I mean when I say that it was an album that I think could have benefited from just a little bit of editing. If somebody had been like, I don't think so, maybe if you just switched these, maybe if you just cut out like a minute of this song here, it probably would have been a little bit more successful for me. But as it is, it's a fun album to listen to, and I had a really good time with it.
Yeah. I want to chime in. I want to chime in before, just going back to the sax solo debate. I think Chris, I think you're spot on when you say that, so far saxes in the year of the powerful metal sax have been handled quite well so far. I will say this means that about 2 months from now, Hunter Hendricks is going to announce the next Liturgy album, and it is all going to be intentionally bad sax.
Liturgy jazz saxophone album.
Yes.
My God.
Is this an inopportune moment to say that I liked the last Liturgy album?
Yeah, it is.
God damn it.
It is, Chris.
Transcendental sax metal.
Oh man, I can't do that. Of all of the bands I've tried to listen to, I just on paper Liturgy. Oh, we are talking about Liturgy. We are talking about Liturgy's discography as a whole. There is nothing that they have ever done that has remotely interested me, and I've tried. On paper, it seems like it would be perfect because I am super into like pretentious hipster black metal, but like Liturgy is the one band that I just like. They're somehow too pretentious for me.
Well, I think he's trolling. I I don't think
But
it's. I don't think it's real. I think he's just.
Yeah.
It's like all a big practical joke.
Like, quick thing as an academic, obviously, and his whole thing about transcendental black metal. Let me get into it. It's like
Yeah.
just real quick. Like, shut the fuck up, you stupid pretentious fucker.
Yes.
Tell us how you really feel.
The Heracat has spoken.
Again, I come from a very interesting academic background, so when I heard this album, I think was like 2 years ago, the artwork, I was like, shut the fuck up, you stupid pretentious bastard.
Thank God we don't have much personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, let's move into Mark and your take on the album. Just obviously another relative Amorphis newbie.
So I'm. Let me see. I'm an older guy. I'm a middle-aged metalhead, and I came into listening to more modern metal in the early 2000s.
Okay.
From the 80s. So that's kind of my background. And I really liked Skyforger. So I listened to Silent Waters and Skyforger, and then they kind of fell off the map for me. And I think since then I've been listening to more these sort of underground genres, a little more Black and Death and all these different kind of genres. And before, when you guys were talking about, how would you classify them, and is there a need for classification? I think, some might talk about sounds that are more major label or a little more melodic, more mainstream, and they definitely fall into that kind of category for me. So I'm less of a fan of the more symphonic elements that they've had recently, but I think they do it really well, and I find myself agreeing with Dan quite a bit that for a very melodic, kind of epic, cinematic sound, I think they do it really quite well.
Yeah, they just they've tinkered. I mean, they've really, they're not quite the same band that they were when Tommy joined on Eclipse, but they just in making little tweaks here and there, I think they've become really good at that sound. It took them a little while to get there, but it's really after kind of peaking, maybe peaking early on Skyforger, at least in as pertains to the Tommy era, they've sort of rediscovered it, and I think they're making the right kinds of tweaks again, and they're really becoming that kind of good melodic, orchestral, symphonic. They're really becoming good at it, and they're incorporating it tastefully.
Yeah, and I think for that kind of style, they do it quite well. I find myself agreeing with Dan somewhat. I felt like, in the digital age, I think there is a tendency, in my opinion, to we see albums that are way too long. Just my own preference. It's such a melodic album. I kind of feel sort of burnt out by the end of the album. But it's fun. It sort of reminds me of, like, I don't know, an episode of Game of Thrones or something. It's big and kind of flashy, but it's not too cheesy. It feels a little power metalish to me, but that's okay. And they do it well. I don't think it'll be my album of the year, but I think it'll be an album that I'll come back to. And bottom line, it's a fun listen.
Awesome. Well, hey, glad you liked it. Glad your audio thing debut could be an album that you ended up, having somewhat positive feelings about. Yeah.
Put me in the thumbs up category. Yeah.
Awesome. Any particular songs you liked from it? Were there any highlights for you?
I think just the overall feel. I probably have to look at a track list more specifically. I like the B. That's a good track. I think it's a well put together album front to back.
Okay. Awesome.
I like the Annika track. I'm a big fan of hers.
Annika is at the point where, like, I'm pretty sure you add her to anything and she'll make it better.
She can do whatever she wants, and that's it.
She's like Christopher Walken. If Christopher Walken were a Danish Dutch female metal singer, you cannot add her to something and have it get worse. it doesn't.
She could pretty much like sing from a phone book, and
yeah.
Yep.
Seriously though,
I would pay good money to hear that, honestly. Between everything she's done with Devin Townsend, who, like, spoiler alert, Corey and I, and I'm sure a couple of other folks on here are really big fans of. Everything she's done with him, and now this, she's not to mention her own stuff with her Anik and her, like the Gathering and whatnot. Like it's just stellar all around.
So
she's at that point now where she can do whatever the hell she wants, and no one can say a damn thing about it.
Yeah.
This is actually my first time hearing her on anything, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
goodness. God damn it, Vincent.
The Gathering.
We were actually just talking about this in the Nine Circles group chat last night. We were talking about Devin Townsend. And I was asking for recommendations for where to start for people, because I have listened to I think maybe a couple of Strapping Young Lad songs. I don't think I've listened to any of his solo stuff before, but I remember her name being associated with his solo project. And I remember somebody said her name was going to be associated with this album, and so I was looking for that. And when the track with her came out on it, I was like, okay, I understand what this is all about now. Like, she is insanely talented.
Do you like to smile big dopey smiles? Then listen to any song in which Annika is featured.
Yeah. There is a reason why I have been seeing people scream her praises from the rooftops. I wholly understand that now. She has an incredible voice, and she absolutely made that track her own.
Her work with The Gathering is so good. That's one of my favorite. One of my favorite bands.
Mandalion is such an essential album for that time period. If you do nothing else, Vincent, go seek out The Gathering's Mandalion.
I got more homework now then.
It's just a phenomenal record with her.
The rest of Amorphis' discography just got shoveled off to the side. Vince has a new assignment now.
I'm in way over my head.
Well, I want to just touch on a couple things that I haven't seen come up. Everyone sort of takes different things away from an album. Just everyone's listening experience is different. But I want to touch on a couple highlights that I haven't heard talked about yet. I think once I got past the B, which I played on repeat a couple times, because it really while Corey and I were talking when it first came out about maybe they should drop the harsh vocals, blah blah blah, we were kind of uncertain of it. It really grew on me, and by the time the album came out, I was like, yeah, I just want to listen to this. I just want to listen to this over and over again. All right, and then so I finally got through it, and the very next song, Message in the Amber. I believe I texted you and Josh, and my text was something akin to, I need this riff injected into my veins via continuous IV infusion. It was it's just this amazing, folky, melodic, so Amorphis, so perfectly Amorphis riff.
It's great.
I just adore it. And the rest of the song holds out. The intro, it's mainly a part of the intro, but they do bring it back in various forms throughout the rest of the song. And I love it. Second, I would say the centerpiece of the album, Heart of the Giant.
That's really
Heart of the Giant and We Curse, those back to back, really impressed me for I guess moving towards the second half of the album.
Heart of the Giant, Corey, it feels like, because I know I'm going to bring this up because I know you're really into this one. Heart of the Giant feels like a sister song to Majestic Beast from Skyforger.
Yeah, it's a good call. I didn't really look at it from that perspective, but there's definitely a connection there.
There's just such a devastation between those two, a sense of auditory devastation. Those riffs are just so heavy, so powerful, and they add just the right amount of dramatic flair, I guess, for lack of a better turn of phrase. But oh my God, I cannot get enough of it.
Yeah, and those two tracks feel to me like two of the heavier tracks. And
that's what I liked about this album. It still has a lot of those elements, those heavier elements. We're talking about the folkiness and how pretty and fun it is, but it still has that punishment. in there, which is good.
It's not a punishment if you like it. So.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
absolutely.
that depends on what you're into, Harakat.
It depends on what you're into too, my friend. So no.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, you two get a room for your
It's a
masochism.
family podcast. Thank you.
So wrapping things up, like Vince, obviously I know you can't 100% weigh in on this. You can technically, it's the best album of the Tomy era for you.
Yeah, it's the only album of the Tomy era for me, so it's by definition the best that I've heard.
But for everyone else, I know Mark, you said you had listened to Silent Waters and Skyforger and stuff like that.
Yeah, Thousand Lakes too. Yeah.
Yeah. But specifically, with the regard to the Tommy Judson era of the band, and I guess maybe even more broadly the whole of Amorphis, if you'd like to take it that far, where do you think the Queen of Time stacks up? Like where would you place it in the pantheon?
This is Mark. I haven't listened to enough of the discography to really say, because I've only heard like 3 of their albums. But I would probably go Skyforger, Silent Waters, the current album. Yeah, I'd go. That would be my order right there. Yeah, you guys, most of you have heard their entire discography, so I just heard a tiny bit.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, hey, we can still get your input. It's still very much appreciated. Anyone else? Hera, Corey, Chris.
Give me like another year, and I'll see. I mean, but the thing is, Silent Waters is probably my favorite. Skyforger, they're pretty much interchangeable at the top of the list for me. But one of the things that I love about this album is just how they have never gotten old. 2007 to 2009, and I still listen to them probably on a monthly basis, if not more frequently than that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how. I love this album right now. Queen of Time is incredible. I'm curious to see how well it sticks, I guess, long term. Because under the Red Cloud, which I enjoyed as well, I don't find myself going back to that nearly as often as I thought I would when it came out. So we'll see. But it's probably going to be a top 5 Amorphis album for me when it's all said and done. I just don't know where exactly yet.
I think this album's better than Red Cloud for me personally.
Agreed.
Very good.
Yeah, and I think this album could have gotten completely overblown. It could have been way over the top. If you just kind of look at all the elements on paper, it could have been really uber, like an Epica album, like a real kind of over the top album. And the big takeaway for me is they given all the elements that go into the album, all the different things, it's done with a reasonable amount of restraint. It's a winner for me.
Awesome.
See, I'm gonna take the opposite track and kind of tag on to something that Vincent said earlier. So for me, still Under the Red Cloud is probably still my favorite, only because, Mark, to what you said, at least for me, Queen of B, it's a little, it's not overblown, I think, but it's so solid. And as much as I like the album, I'm not as huge a fan as Among Stars as everybody else. I really like it. It's by far not my favorite track on the album, though. So for me, I'd probably put it kind of tied for second with Skyforger. The thing that puts Under the Red Cloud over the top for me is just it's a little more concise. So to Vincent's point about chopping off, you don't need to repeat it 5 times. There's something, and I've always been a stickler even with my own music. 45 minutes. Like I come from the same era of Mark, where I grew up listening to late 70s, early 80s is where I kind of discovered metal. So for me, it has to fit on the side of a 90-minute tape. So, if you can fit 45 minutes and Under the Red Cloud, looking at it now, it's just over that, but it's still a little bit more concise. It's a little bit more in your face, which is just more of what I look for in music. So I'd probably put Queen of Time, dog yelping, animal cruelty aside, I'd put it right under the Red Cloud, at least in my kind of pantheon of Amorphis albums.
Yeah, this sucker is about an hour long.
Yeah, it is.
It goes by. It does go by quicker than that, but you're right. It's
not a slog to listen to at all. So no. I don't want to give that impression, but there gets a point, and it's probably toward the end for me where I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this to wrap up. And at least I don't get that right now with Under the Red Cloud for me.
Fair.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hera? Hera, are you still with us?
I thought she was just looking pensive, but I think
I thought she was just.
She might actually be off the call. Hera.
Oh no! Rest in peace.
I guess we've lost Hera. I can't tell her little video icon. Oh, wait. Okay, it has switched to a picture. Maybe no, and she's
gone.
Yeah,
and she's gone.
And there it went.
Yeah. Okay. In that case, I will try and jump in and formulate some thoughts on this. I think.
Oh wait, no, she's back.
Oh. Hey.
Hey.
Son of a bitch.
I feel it.
There's the Hera
Okay.
we know and love.
Sorry, I missed everything, but my internet decided to go out for some fucking whatever reason. So I'm doing it on my phone.
Good old internet.
I had the.
So now I'm on my data, which is great, which is fine. But this is
Good thing we're wrapping it up then.
We'll be quick about it. Where do you think this album? Where do you think Queen of Time? What's its place in the Amorphis pantheon? Where would you stack it up?
I can tell you where everything else stacks because oh man, I want to talk about Circles so bad, but I won't. I want to talk about Circles so bad because I love you, Peter Tagrin, but holy shit, that album, it's the worst.
It's not great.
It's the worst.
Okay, no, there's worse, but I can talk about Peter Tagrin as someone that loves hypocrisy, but like as a producer, it's kind of like a hit or a miss in a way. So for me, I love Circle for what it is, as it is. It's not my favorite. I can think of like 2 other albums that may be on top of that one. So it's there.
On top of, sorry, we lost you for a second. On top of this one, on top of Queen of Time.
So no, I can like Circle. If we had to like rank it, Circle's probably at the lower, and then Queen of Time is like at the top.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Yeah, I'm somewhere. I chuck this thing somewhere in the middle. I think it's for me. My favorite is Skyforger, just because like Corey said, that album came out almost 10 years ago now, and I still go back to it. It's still just fucking fantastic. Every bit as enjoyable as it was back in 2009. I would put number 2. I would say maybe Under the Red Cloud, and then I think I would put this right behind it. Just if only because the tie broken, if only because Under the Red Cloud has had a couple years now. I do still enjoy it. Has staying power that we just haven't. Not a knock on Queen of Time, but we just haven't had enough time with it to assess that yet. I think 4 or 5. I flip flop between Eclipse and Silent Waters. Which one goes where? I don't know. I like them both. I really do. But they're just a tad lower than those first 3. Beginning of Time 6, and then Circle is very, very clear 7. At least for the Tomy era. Factoring in the rest of the discography, I don't know. I have high regard for Corellia and Thousand Lakes and Elegy. Sorry, Vince.
I did. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned. Oh no, I did. Yeah, I mentioned that I didn't like Elegy.
You did. Yes.
You did.
I think out of all the albums, there's 3 that I haven't listened to yet.
It felt like they were just trying to do too much.
No, but even Against Widows, like I love that song. Oh my gosh.
It had its moments, but
okay. Fair enough.
Like if you want a good summation of like the first couple of albums, there's the Story 10th anniversary release that they put out a couple of years ago. And that one is like a good resource for if you want to catch up on all of them, there it is.
Yeah.
Take that into consideration.
But
Jesus.
So that's where I'm at. I don't know. Yeah. So I think we've kind of come to a consensus. I think we all sort of like this album.
Yeah. It's varying degrees of thumbs up from everyone, but it's a thumbs up.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Amorphis, Queen of Time, album number 13. It is our album of the month for May. I don't know if we have come to consensus on, like what. I mean, we're still very, very early days into June. Something could surprise us, but so thus far, there's no consensus on what we're going to be back to talk about next month. So Corey, you can't spoil it.
There might be a front runner. I think there's one that we're all kind of leaning to. I think.
Okay, well let's not talk about it here. Let's maintain a sense of surprise.
3 worthy records we could talk about, and it's only 10 days into the month.
No, that's true. We got hit with an onslaught, especially this last Friday. There were some absolute fire that got dropped.
Yeah,
and
there's
some of which I am still trying to work my way through, like that Yob album. I got about half an hour into it when I listened to it at work, and I was very rudely interrupted, and that kind of threw the brakes on that. So I think that's going to be tonight's homework, is trying to...
Vince, do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Especially with Yob.
Especially with Yob.
Yeah.
No,
June has been an embarrassment of riches so far. Got a lot to choose from. There's Tomb Mold. There's Yob.
There's so good.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff. So
I did something.
Dan, do we try to make the play for? Do we try to make the play for Riley Walker for the June album?
That's high on my list. No, wasn't that was a May?
Was that May?
That was late May. I think that was late May.
God damn it! God damn it!
Riley Walker, for folks at home, not a metal performer at all, but damn good record. You should absolutely listen to that. But yeah, so we won't have a spoiler because there's nothing to spoil just yet. We thank you all at home, and thank you to my esteemed colleagues as well for joining us here. Thank you to Harakat, Chris, Corey, Mark, and Vince. This was a wonderful chat, gentlemen. Any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Should we rank Amorphis albums on the blog like we did with the Judas Priest and Iron Maiden?
Ooh.
I think you'd get some takers for that.
That could be fun, right?
Why not?
That would stir up a little controversy, I think.
Yeah. That was a fun little exercise. I wouldn't hate doing that again.
No.
Can we all agree Far From the Sun is the worst album? Can we agree on Far From the Sun? Because I can't even get through that.
I want to really, really talk about Passe Cocinem just for like a minute, because no, here's why. Because I loved, and I think I'm in the low end of the spectrum where I say that I really liked An Anniversarium, but that's because it was one of the first Amorphis albums I went back to that I really enjoyed. But yeah, Far From the Sun is.
Yeah.
And also, whatever you do, don't go listen to Ajatara unless you want to look into some really weird shit that Passe Cocinem is into.
That's his black metal band, right?
No, right, because he may or may not be a neo-Nazi, and I haven't confirmed that yet. So I'm like, ugh.
Good.
Regard. Yeah. And I liked Neophytes, which was the bad part.
Well then.
Mark here again. I'm going to riff on something Chris talked about earlier, which is the whole album thing versus editing. I'm beginning to think in this current age, we've got albums that are playlist albums versus albums that may hold their own as an entire unit. And so I think my final thoughts are this Amorphis album is a good playlist album. Individually, I think the songs all hold up, and I'll enjoy it for, I think probably years to come. But it probably is not going to be my favorite album in terms of the way we used to think of albums as a complete kind of front to back experience. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's I think I'm starting to realize that myself. Just like getting to mull it over as I'm talking about it is like it is a good playlist album. All of the songs individually on it, if you listen to them out of context from the album, they're fine. They're pretty good. As a whole, but as a whole, I liked it. It was fun, but I thought that there was some stuff that they could do better. But there's always stuff you can do better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna be old at heart here for a little bit too. No offense, guys. I've sort of gotten to a point.
To those of us that are actually old.
Yeah,
I was gonna say some people here are older.
I was gonna say, how old are you people? Because what the hell?
Yeah,
here?
What do you mean, you people?
I think
Sorry.
I am younger than all of you. That's
No,
why.
I
You
will
are.
simply say that I am closer to 50 than 40. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say I'm much closer to 50 than Chris is because I'm beyond that point. So that makes me certifiably.
I'm
Double
somewhere
eight.
between 17 and 82. So
Yeah.
no, but I will say I in not just in music, in a lot of my media lately, podcasts in particular, I've sort of found myself longing for just concision. I don't know what the word is. Conciseness. I think it's conciseness.
Conciseness.
Concision
It's
sounds fun,
concise.
though.
Concision does sound fun.
That sounds like a good death metal band name.
Yeah.
I once went to a concision. It looked painful. At least for the baby.
Oh boy. No, but I find like my podcast, I think the sweet spot is an hour. My albums, I think the sweet spot is like 40 to 50 minutes.
Yes.
You know, that's not to say that there aren't exceptions, and you know, bands can't do more than that and capture me the entire time. But I think, you know, the greatest success rate for, you know, me liking a record is if it's right in that sweet spot, like not too overbearing and not, you know, too much of a chore to listen to, just something that's, you know, nice portion.
Yeah,
Especially.
Sorry, go.
I was going to say I'm exactly the same way with almost exactly the same time frames. Is just like I've like abandoned stuff if I'm like, oh, this is over an hour long. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And I think like keep tight 45 is always my and.
Well, that's why.
45.
That's why that Panopticon record, I didn't really get a chance to sit down and listen to it in full until like a week before we had our podcast.
I got lucky, I think, in that I just like I happened to find myself with a 2-hour uninterrupted chunk of time on the day that it came out, and Panopticon are one of the only bands that I will actively take that plunge for. Like I loved that album. I loved the Bell Witch album from last year. That was an hour and 20 minutes. There are not many other bands besides Bell Witch that could make me do that. And I had to fight for time to listen to that album. But
you know, the other thing to say is how many people still listen to albums. And I'm of the opinion that metal fans are maybe, you know, one of a handful of kind of groups of music that, by and large, young and old, I think we still do buy albums. I think we listen to albums, but
it's
many,
not just the singles.
I am old enough to have an 18-year-old kid, and you know, there's no way she and her friends would even think about buying an album. They don't even have the concept.
Yeah.
Well, that's speaking to something we talked about before the podcast. The lure of vinyl is that you don't have readily available the ability to skip tracks, right? You have to get up and walk over and lift up the needle. So there's something about, you know, we can argue to the cows come home about the audiophile, you know, fidelity of analog and vinyl versus digital. And as someone who collects vinyl, I happen to be of the fence of some digital sounds better and some analog sounds better. There's not a clear winner, but there is something to be said about the concentration of putting an album on and having the physical thing there and being at least not as predisposed to jump up and change that dial, so to speak.
Being present in the process. And that's also a large. I'm somebody who collects vinyl and tapes and physical formats and stuff. And I agree with Chris. There is some stuff that I will not buy on vinyl because I think that it just sounds better or works better digitally. But I try to buy the physical product as much as I can because I enjoy the ritual of it. Right. I enjoy like holding the thing in my hands, looking at the cover while I'm listening to it, you know, in large, very detailed format. And I enjoy like, you know, the getting up and flipping over. And I realize that that's not for everyone, but it's something that's very like soothing to me.
It does make the act of listening to music an event instead of like a supplement to whatever else you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. And I enjoy music. I want to elevate like my listening experience, because listening to music is a large part of what I do with my life, and it's exactly like what you said. You know, it makes it an event. It forces you to be like present in it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Hard agree.
Song order. Yep.
All righty. Hera, do we have another false exit?
No, because I'm thinking about like physical versus digital versus like the media, and so as someone who is pretty much who grew up basically broke, like my 60 gigabytes or whatever of digital music that I have been for me like the thing that's kept me in listening to music for so long. And now that I have a somewhat stable job and can buy the physical things, like sometimes I like having the digital because I commute for like 3 hours each day, and so I have the time to sit and listen to the digital.
Right.
Yeah.
How far is your commute? I know you're out in LA. Is that like 5 miles?
No.
It could be.
No. So where I live is a tiny little suburb in the smack in the middle of the San Fernando Valley, and my job is in Westwood. So that's
oh boy.
Ew.
And because I do not drive for reasons that I will not disclose on this podcast,
I wouldn't blame you.
It's an hour and a half commute to my job every day.
If I could get away with not driving, I would too. Shit.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yep. It's awful.
Alrighty. Anyone else before I do another false outro?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Are we good? All right.
Everybody cover your mics.
No. Hey, thank you guys all for joining up. I'm glad we were able to do this today. Thank you to the folks at home as well. Appreciate your listenership, and if you share the pod out or anything like that, we really appreciate the support. So we will be back this time, maybe not this time exactly, but sometime in July to talk about June's album of the month. Until then, you know where to find us: 9circles.co, facebook.com/9circlesblog, Twitter and Instagram @_9circles, and of course reach out to us by email 9circlesblog@gmail.com. For Hera, Chris, Corey, Mark, Vince, I am your host, Dan Kaplan. This has been our album of the month. I forgot what it was called there for a second. Our album of the month on the 9 Circles audio thing. We will see you next time.